Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Verdict of the Ancient Kings. We call for an early release. Now, over the past weekend, we had the Cosmic Showdown, the first of what I believe to be many consistent, cash tournaments that Hex is going to be putting together. And, I have with us one of the top 9 players to play in that event. Nico, how are you doing?
Good, man. It didn't feel great to not make top eight, but I'm happy I got ninth. That's pretty good for me.
Yeah, that event was, I guess, a real way to test, like whether or not the set was really working as well as it should. I didn't hear of any bugs, which is something that I know a lot of players were concerned about when they said that Herofall was going to be legal, and it kind of just opened up the floodgates of a lot of the decks that we expected to see. And we'll get into a little bit of your deck as the show goes on, but what was your experience with that playing in close to 120, or I think it was 112 players, the creme de la creme of all, Hex players?
Well, I played a deck that was very, very quick. It was a mono Ruby deck, and my experience with most of the games was like it was ending on turn 3 or 4, and I was done with the round within 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of 2-0 wins, which was nice. So I didn't get to see a lot about how other decks worked until the decks that worked well were doing it super early in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Mono Blood was my biggest challenge and threat,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up losing I think to 2 out of 3 Mono Bloods I played against.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Mono Blood was strong, and I saw a lot of other deck lists from other people that were playing that were interesting and made use of some of the set 5 cards. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the meta hasn't shifted too terribly much. It is different than it was in 3-4, but it's not. You'll still see the same archetypes for a lot of constructed play.
Yeah, that's we'll get into that in just a little bit and dissect your deck and talk about play mistakes and hitting yourself in the forehead when you do so. But let's go
Yeah.
ahead and go into, I guess, last week's puzzle. I believe we had 9 entries that actually figured out this particular puzzle. It was to win the game. You had Hero, Rutherford Banks, all the information's on the screen, 2 Ghostblade Duelists, and the Hideous Conversion. And the solution was, well, Gallows Gas. So for all of you guys who forgot, with a single Gallows Gas, Hideous Conversion, 2 Ghostblade Duelists, and Rutherford Banks, it is actually possible to deal 20 damage in a single turn, even if you only have 4 resources. So, hey, who would have known? And 20 damage out there. We do have our 3 winners, and I forgot to type them up. Nico, do you still have them, or have you sent them out
Yeah,
already?
no, I have them. It's Chonard, Mercenary, and Wastelands. Congratulations, you all win 1 pack of Primal Dawn. Sorry, it's not the most recent set, but a little back stock of old packs never hurt.
Yeah, getting some of those old packs, you can crack them open, see if you get anything. Who knows? There might be a rune ear or some other goodness inside there for you to play with and or put on the auction house. Now, let's go ahead and jump straight into, well, the Cosmic Showdown and the deck lists that you actually sent to me. And it was a mono Ruby deck. Unfortunately, we couldn't get an official screenshot because all of your cards have been, well, taken away, so to speak, as the Herofall set, the playset that you had was just temporary. But we can take a look at this mono Ruby deck that you're running, and I see a lot of old familiar friends in, the Burns and the Quash Ridge Tuskers, but I see a lot of out of left fields, the Scorches, the Crimson Clarity, and some cards that impulse cards that you would only see mainly perhaps in limited. How did you put this all together? What made you think of running this mono Ruby deck first of all?
Well, I can't take all the credit for it, and in fact, just going back to the last screen with Gallo Gas being a solution, he was. I'll talk about it more later, but he was one of the problems I ran into
Mm.
during the tournament. But this list is actually John Druid's list from our guild. He likes to play Mono Ruby, and he has tuned the deck to a point where some of the cards that don't always make sense together work a little bit better because of some of the new set. Um, the set 5 cards, and those cards are primarily the Matriarch of Flames
Mm-hmm.
and Fireball, and those are the only two. Let me just double check. Yeah, the only two set 5 cards in the main deck. And because we're running only 19 shards in this deck, sometimes in order to activate Fireball, you actually need to use a Crimson Clarity. But doing that also pumps up a Matriarch of Flames,
Mm-hmm.
or allows a Matriarch of Flames to be playable as well. So there's just an added level of synergy with the cards in the deck that we didn't have in set 3-4. And the deck plays almost as if you don't care how many shards are in your opening hand as long as you have one. And you're typically winning by turn 3 as long as you hit a second shard. And some of my games, and I'll upload the recordings later, but some of the games I played, the only reason I lost is because I didn't hit a second shard
Oh,
for
wow.
3 or 4 turns. And I think I won 2 or 3 games on one shard. So it's a pretty interesting deck in that you can actually go off on very little resources,
Mm-hmm.
but you're almost punished more for mulliganing if you have at least one shard in your hand.
Oh, so
'Cause-
you really need the number of cards, like the ruby shard. I'm looking at the cost curve. You have scorches, you have your seen red, your burns, fireballs. It technically is a one resource card, but as everyone says, it does cost a 3 ruby threshold.
Threshold.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
that is the issue. I'm looking at like the Crimson Clarity, the Impulse to try and get your Sun Soul Phoenixes into play. Perhaps you Impulse purposely ditch a Sun Soul Phoenix with some other actions to pull them back. And I see a lot of synergy here. It looks like a random pile of cards, but the more you look at it, the more strange combinations that seem to like rise to the top. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or like if you can get your Psychotic Anarchist down, I'm sure it also helps with your Ruby fixing, being able to just draw additional cards.
Yeah, and Psychotic Anarchist, generally people look at it and say, hey, I don't mind getting an extra card. I'll take 2 damage from it. But in this case, like, your opponent should want to remove that as soon as possible because your card advantage is going to go a lot further than their card advantage because of how fast the deck is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, like as you're saying, you look at the deck list, it might look a little random, but if you can play out everything in your hand by turn 3,
Mm-hmm.
then you're likely going to be taking a win because all of these cards do a lot of damage quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And one interesting interaction is that multiple Sun Soul Phoenixes in your hand, even on one shard, can be the best possible hand to keep. I had a game, and I think this is a fishbowl game just against an AI, but on turn 2, I drew my second shard, Crimson Clarity, Scorched, and then Fireball, and then I played 3 Sun Soul Phoenixes. I think I did something like 21 damage. It was crazy. So there's some really nutty turn 2 and turn 3 plays you can do with this deck.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah, like
ahead.
yeah, one of the main I would say like one of the main reasons why you don't often see impulse is you're supposed to draw 2 cards, and in a deck normally you're like, well, I just already used 2 resources. Am I going to really be able to use what I just drew? And with Scorches, with Quash Ridge, Scene Red, Burn, Fireball, Kindling Scar, like the majority of your deck costing less, 1 or less, it is actually very, very easy to play additional cards even when you are on turn 3. So you can Crimson Clarity into an Impulse and start generating something to happen on your side. And then with the reduced cost of the Sun Soul Phoenixes, this looks like an extremely fast deck. And I'm assuming you caught a lot of people unaware of just what's happening. Where on turn 2 they're like trying to like, okay, this is the early game, and all of a sudden they get hit for like 5 damage, 6 damage. Or like, oh, am I up against the ropes yet? And then turn 3, the killing blow happens, and they kind of like scratch their head and wonder what exactly happened.
Yeah, so people were caught off guard, and one thing that a lot of people were worried about when they're going into the set 5 tournament is that that card Herofall, and they're worried about Herofall blanking cards of their deck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this deck almost completely ignores that even being a threat because if it hits anything like a Sun Soul Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
that Sun Soul Phoenix is still going to your crypt, so you can still get it back.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really care about all the other copies in your deck, and every other card you draw, even if it's not a troop, is going to be dealing damage.
Mm-hmm.
So they're almost helping you get to your actions to combo off. And Impulse, even though there are some major downsides to it, it's a really good card for this specific deck, and it's why also on the reserves I was reluctant to put in any 2-cost actions. I would have loved to have Crimson Bolts in my deck because the biggest threat I found after that tournament were the Vampire Kings and Vampire Princesses, and I don't really have enough one-action cards to deal with those threats. But anyway, but besides that, I think I had a good shot against every deck I played against, and as long as I drew well, I won. So.
All right. I guess my follow-up question is, since whenever we seem to put up a deck, people start to try and play with it out there on the ladder and whatnot. What did you see people putting in reserves against you in games 2 and 3? What were some of the ways that people combated at least this type of speed that seemed to come out of nowhere?
Yeah, it's hard to say, to be honest, because I think Vampire Kisses came in a lot against me, against Blood players.
Okay.
But the reason why I say it's hard to say is I don't get to see a lot of their deck if I'm winning so quickly. But I would imagine some of the earlier game stuff came in. Like I mentioned, that Gallows Gas kind of hit a nerve with me because Identikit, the guy that actually took down the tournament, beat me in round 5. He was my first loss. And he beat me with the turn 6 Gallows Gas after like dealing with much of my threats. And that was a game I was stuck on 1 for 4 turns. And he just hit a Gallows Gas that was a 7/7 with speed and unblockable.
Oh.
And I couldn't do anything. Like, I had blockers, but because it had unblockable, I didn't have anything that had 7 attack. So, yeah, it was a pretty crazy barn burner. But I've also saw things come in like Vilefang Eremite. Like, that was a really random card, but it came in against me to proc spiders in a Dreadling themed deck.
Oh, okay.
I think that was actually Identikit's deck as well. And what else? I saw Steel Intel come in against me, against Gabesman, who I lost to in the 7th round. And some of the other games to me were kind of a blur because they didn't really have enough early game to deal with my pressure. Like, I saw some of the Ardent themed decks with like that 2/1 Swift Strike Coyote Troop. And
the War Party, right?
Yeah, that guy. And I had Scorch and I had Burn, so that usually dealt with that. I did see a few Valor decks, and they had some aggressive troop-based decks, but their troops typically didn't have speed, and they were focused on either having Swift Strike or some other stat buff that would help it deal damage, but not help them defend or take actions to the face. So I usually was able to beat people a lot of the time with just a Sun Soul Phoenix or a Matriarch that was pumped up.
All right, very good, very good. I'm sure a lot of people out there are looking at this deck like, oh, I love that deck. I wish I had 3 Matriarchal Flames to actually play that deck, and 4 Sun Soul Phoenixes. And we're still early in Heroes Fall as people continue to flesh out their collections. And talking about fleshing out their collections, let's move right along to the best way to flesh out your collections, and that's with gauntlets. Gauntlets, Evo or sealed, both of them are the best way to just play the game and play the collector game. And people constantly ask me like, hey, what's the best way to play in the battlegrounds? You know, you're gonna be opening up packs. If you already have the packs, you know you're gonna be opening them up anyways, and spend the 100 plat. Even if you go 3 and 3 in an Evo gauntlet, you essentially opened up 2 additional packs for 100 plat. and they can still proc Primal Pack. So you're not going to get a better deal even in the auction house on its best day. So let's go ahead and, well, I would say figure out and talk about the best way to get to 3 and 3s. And rather than looking at all those power rares and power legendaries that you're probably not going to see very often, let's move down a tier and look at the uncommons that you should be looking for.
Yeah, so I put together a list that I shared in our forum post. It's also on Hex TCG browser of the power uncommons for limited play. And Crota's showing some of them here. I think there's about 26 in total that I listed. But these 10 right here, I guess we can quickly kind of go through them and why they're powerful. Do you have a preference in how we do this? Should we talk about each card, or just kind of quickly make comments based on the cards in this poll?
Well, I would say let's touch up on one card and briefly talk about the archetype. Like, I'm taking a look at the first card,
Sure.
Altar of Nazun. It's a perfect artifact. So it can be blended in with any particular shard that you're using for, but it's going to be mainly blended in with blood, or I feel blood, diamond, or both of those because of the evasion that is offered in the new gem set. A diamond, when a troop with a diamond shard, minor diamond, socket minor diamond attacks, it gains flight. So that's a form of evasion. And also the same with the blood gem, where you have to have an attack or equal to or less than in order to block. And there are a lot of very, very powerful socketed troops out there, and Altar of Nazun kind of covers both, where you get a little bit of card advantage. It generates you a socketed card so you can draw an additional card, and it kind of sits there in play, just taunting your opponent, because every turn that they drop that 3-drop 2/3 Coyote that's going to be flying, they're going to draw 1 or 2 additional cards if they have that in play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that card is really great in just comboing out some of the greater socketed troops. Even Ruby, where you can create Swift Strike and Valor troops with minor Ruby gems. But I'm just going to jump one card over to Awaken Thurigus, who is great for that archetype as well. You just put the can't be blocked by troops of attack less than this, and he has Scrounge 2/2/2. So at turn 6, if you have 6 shards, he'll be a 6/6, only blockable by 6 attack or more troops. So it's a great way to finish a game out.
Yeah, and then following up, there is the annoying blood champion, the Orc champion, 23 health, 3 charge or 3 charge power, give rage 1 to any troop, and we've seen that placed on socketed troops and the very annoying 3/1 invincible life drain flyer that we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely. That card is probably one of the most frustrating ones to deal with when you don't have any negative defense actions.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the Ardent Officer is great for all the Ardent archetypes where you're putting Valor on troops and attacking. Great with the 2-drop Ruby troop that gives all Valor troops Swift Strike.
Mm-hmm.
And he just combos with a lot of the great Diamond and Ruby Valor themed troops that are heavily played in the format. It's probably one of the best color combos for the format, I would say, Ruby Diamond.
Yeah, Ruby Diamond, very strong. One of the things that usually caught me off guard the first time I saw the Ardent Officer is it's not your Valor troops, it's your Ardent troops.
Ardent.
Yeah, there's so many things out there, like when your Valor troops attacks, this gets. Ardent Officer doesn't care if you're valorous or not. Everyone on the Ardent side is definitely going to get that +2/+1, and it really, really helps. It's essentially a 3-drop 4/3, but also gives like a rally or +2. Yeah, it's just really strong and can really swing things. Moving along that hyper aggressive nature, we'll jump over to the Bolt Spasm, a 1-drop 3/1. Even though it's not Ardent or Underworld, it just immediately puts the clock down.
Yeah, there's not much else to say about it. It's a one drop 3/1, only one threshold, so it just adds immediate pressure. If your opponent doesn't have an early game play, they're going to be looking at least 6 damage possibly,
Hmm.
or having to chump with something that they paid quite a bit more to play.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a great aggressive card to play in this format.
Yeah, adding in assault. Anytime you can attack with a 3/1 early on, and you have other assault troops such as the deranged marauder over here in the center portion. Maybe you can drop the deranged marauder on turn 3, or do something else and put more pressure early on as well. Early aggression has taken a new life here in limited with set 5.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jumping to casualty of war, it's just most of the troops you're going to see are going to be ardent or underworld based. But if they happen to have something strong like a bolt spasm or something,
Hmm.
that's a great 2-drop removal to look for. It's a quick speed 2, so you
Hmm.
can play it as a trick, and there's really no downside to running it in your deck.
Yeah, you're always going to find something. One of the bigger things that you could find, I believe, the Scion of Nazun. I'll jump to another page right now. A 5-drop 4/3, the Socket Major, and you can go ahead and use that most, or I believe all of the artifact troops, and there are a fair number of them out there. In set 5 that see a lot of play. Casualty of War just trades very, very efficiently, and a lot of times people don't expect it. Most people are not expecting quick removal any longer, short of the 5 cost. I believe, is it overpower? The attacking or blocking troop is destroyed. So a lot of people aren't expecting that 2 cost Casualty of War when they're doing their combat tricks and things of that nature.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, there are some decks that are Valor based that probably will be running all Ardent, but because it's limited, they're also limited in the tools they have to put into their deck. So
Hmm.
you will probably find an artifact or some one-off troop that is not faction based that you can get with that card.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll see the 2-drop 1/2 artifact that has that ruby that creates the valor, and then it might be
Yeah,
valorous. The Casualty of War will equally, push that out, and perhaps they were counting on that swift strike on a block or something like that. The Casualty of War definitely can lead into a bit of a misplay. But moving on, the Clobberdon, I I wanted to hear your take on that because it's a one resource that's really kind of like a 3 resource 4/3, and what was your take on including this particular dinosaur?
so, I mean, that's a good question. I have mixed feelings about it too, because Wild is not generally very strong in the format.
Mm-hmm.
People are not, they're not heavily committing to Wild. And I've noticed that in Limited, my pools are fairly mediocre when it comes to Wild. And maybe that's just because I haven't seen anything great yet. But
Mm-hmm.
so Clobberdon is great for what it is, but it is difficult to play it consistently early on to have a big impact. I think I'd much rather have a Bolt Spasm where I can play it on turn 1
Mm-hmm.
versus waiting till maybe turn 4 or 5 when I actually have that third wild threshold in play to drop that down. It does have some interaction with the there's that Dread card, the Dread Harvest, I think, where it pulls a wild shard out of your deck,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you play a wild shard, it creates a Dreadling.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some ways to get your wild threshold a lot faster,
Mm-hmm.
but I find it good for its cost, but it often is not having the impact it needs late in the game.
Yeah, I was kind of like, you know what, maybe we should remove it. I don't know. It was a borderline card
Right.
for me. I'll keep it there for now, but we'll see. I don't want to hurt the Clobberdon's feelings. They might show up on my front door and just absolutely wreck me. Moving on to the Death Head Rider, and yeah, there's a lot of cards to go over here. A beautiful 3-drop 2/3, and anytime that you can get a 2 for 1 value is absolutely great, especially in limited. And the Death's Head Rider is exactly that. It's a 3-drop 2/3 with flight, so it already has built-in evasion. But add on top of that, your opponent has to sacrifice a troop, and if you time it right, you can remove a very, very large threat from the game, perhaps 4, 5, even 6 cost very easily, and completely shift the momentum as well.
Yeah, not much to add there. It just combos well with blood. You could have like a gruesome deed on top of that to get the scrounge trigger activated, and take out the smaller threat, and then this will take out the bigger threat, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great card. Do you want to just start leapfrogging each other so we can get through the cards quickly?
All right. Well, we already talked about the deranged marauder, so let's go ahead and hit the litter disciple. Strong card. You may be wondering, hey, what other one cost cards am I generating? Dreadlings and Valors, and I don't need to say any more than that. Anytime that you can get an additional Dreadling, an additional Valor in the limited format, it really helps. It's a decent body at 3/4, and most likely you're going to be running some wild troops in there that do give it Valor. So it's going to be a decent body, a 4/5, being able to block anything as well.
Fireball, I'll just mention, it was also in my deck list for the Cosmic Showdown. 3 damage to anything, even the face, once you hit the 3rd rupee threshold. Great card. It's quick speed, so you can use it as a combat trick as well. Great with Swift Strike troops.
Yeah, very strong. Only downside is that triple ruby threshold. You have to be committed to it. Sometimes I've been hearing arguments between Cremate and Fireball, but that's for another time. Let's go ahead and continue right on through. Frostbite, stun up to 2 target troops. Goes along the same problems and benefits as Fireball. You're able to cast it at quick speed, stunning up to 2 troops. You know that they're going to be removed. They're not going to be attacking for 2 turns. They're not going to be able to block. And a lot of people aren't just expecting it, especially at 1 resource, removing the blockers, and can give you the game essentially if they have 2 troops gone for 2 turns.
Yeah, Frostbite's a very strong card. And it's also quick speed, so you can use it right before they attack as well. Another thing to mention about Frostbite is that it's a 2-turn lockdown, so you're going to be getting in lots of attacks if you're able to pass one of those. Good in a Ruby Sapphire build, or even a Blood Sapphire build.
Mm-hmm.
So the Grimskull Tactician is a great 3-drop. It can be splashed in almost any format-defining deck as long as you're playing Diamond. It has an ability that says when it comes into play, or any socketed troop comes into play, you're able to exhaust another troop. And on top of it, it's socketed. So you can also get evasion on it because it's already Diamond. You can get the flight gem.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually works very well on the Valor archetype.
Yeah. All right, moving right along. Hilltop Monastery. Anytime you can get a Valor for free at the start of your turn, definitely do it. I'm sure a lot of players out there know that limited games do tend to go a little bit longer than you expect sometimes, where you get into a little bit of stalemate. And a Hilltop Monastery basically says, well, the stalemate's going to go in my favor the longer it goes. I'm going to win these war of attritions as my troops are getting bigger every single turn.
The Howling Plains Alpha is probably one of the strongest 2-drop cards for the Valor archetype. And if you get beat by this without understanding how strong it is, you will be very frustrated, because if someone has more than one of these and they get to play them in consecutive order, they quickly turn a small army into a huge army.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost on turn 5 to this card before. Even having ways to deal with them, I still lost on turn 5.
Yeah, essentially it's a 2-drop 4/4 when it attacks on turn 3. So big card, and you can get overwhelmed very fast. Moving over to Lava Shaper, all I gotta say is it's a Boomsmith that's a 3/3 that deals 3. Right? It was already really good in the previous archetypes, and now it's even better. It just happens to be Ardent Alliance, and 3 seems to be a magic number in this particular set, where a lot of troops have two for cremate, three for the lava shaper and the fireballs to remove them from play.
Yeah, I think the orcs are trying to teach the dwarves how to make bombs
Yeah.
because they're better at it. Lasgar's Bloodsworn is a 3/3 crush for 2. Crazy good. And it has an ability that says sacrifice another troop and it gains rage 1. So you combo this with some dreadlings, you combo this with the champion that gives you rage. This guy can quickly attack for like rage 4, rage 5. So he's a win condition by himself if he's not removed or chunked early on in the game.
Yeah, the fact that he has crush is just extra goodness. Moving on to Mama Yeti, the card I love to hate because I don't see baby Yetis in my deck or in my pool. Like yeah, there will be times when you open up a sealed pool and you have two Mama Yetis and you're like, oh, I'm not playing any of them. It's a 4-drop 5/5 speed crush, so the speed is that surprise element. That crush is just insult to injury, and the 5/5 is just a monstrous body on the board. But it's only gonna be there if it has a baby to protect.
Yeah, I had 3 in an Evo pool and no babies. Didn't see a baby for my first win, and I don't think I got to 3 because all those Mama Yetis are just taunting me.
Yeah.
The Oaken Hedge Druid is probably another card where it's kind of questionable. Like I'm paying 5 and I'm getting a 3/3 troop, but it does create 3 Valors and puts them into your hand. And if you combo that with that other card we mentioned that gives you +1 of anything you're creating, that's 1 cost.
Mm-hmm.
That can be 4 Valors. So it's a pretty nice card for an uncommon, and it usually can net you value when you need to have that value late in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it combos with all the when Valorous attacks. You gain flight, you gain swift strike, you gain +1/+1, and you are also immune to bring to justice, which is another thing that we'll probably hit up next week when we start looking at the commons. Puke Troll has won me a game by giving crush to a troop. People aren't expecting a quick way to throw down crush. So anytime someone says, I'm gonna chump block with this 1/1 or 0/1 troop, all of a sudden all that damage is going through and then some, and it really catches people off guard.
Yeah, I lost a game to it once, holding back a Reginald's Riposte, thinking that they had an action, and then he drops down. I'm like, oh, I can't play this. Anyway, so the Rocket Raider is a really great late game win con for almost any deck. It has Scrounge 2, Rage 2, so you can be attacking for 4/3 or 4 attack the second he comes into play, and that quickly becomes 6. And there's not a lot of flight troops in the meta, so you will likely be able to get in at least 1 or 2 attacks with this guy.
Yeah, I really like the idea with that diamond gem where you give troops flight, but only when they're attacking. So it kind of like, it's not like, hey, everyone can get flight. There's much more of an aggressive nature with flying and flight in general. Moving on to the Ruthless Intimidator, solid 2-drop 3/1, and I don't think I've ever seen a personal game where we actually use the secondary underworld troop. Game tags, everyone seems to be creating Valors with this Ruthless Intimidator, and at that it becomes a 4/2, possibly larger with Swift Strike, +1/+1, whatever else we happen to see with that Ruthless Intimidator. Strong body, and Valorous is just always very, very good.
Yeah, and the Sign of Nolzon has a major socket for an uncommon troop, which is previously, I think, unheard of. I'm not sure if there's any other uncommons that have major sockets. But you can easily put something in him like the Major Wild Gem is one I like to use, where it creates a random card of the same cost and puts it in your hand. I think it's same or lesser cost that you meet the thresholds for. So that is a great ability to have. And he also has the ability to use like the Major Blood Gem that allows you to sacrifice a troop. So maybe you're playing Dreadlings, you can sack a Dreadling and he quickly becomes a 7/6. So there's some unique ways to utilize the major socket on him.
Hmm. Moving on, Spearcliff Captain. We seem to be covering Valor very, very well, and Spearcliff Captain is one of those reasons why. Anytime you attack with the Spearcliff Captain, all of your Valorous troops gain flight. The Spearcliff Captain, herself in this particular artwork, is also will also be able to fly as well. So all of a sudden, all those troops that you thought could block from the ground, they take to the skies and fly overhead.
The Twilight Revenant is one we touched on a little bit earlier. It's a 3/1 life drain flight, and you pay 6 health, and it gets invincible for the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use this defensively to take out troops, but the best way to use it is paired with the Orc champion that gives Rage 1.
Mm-hmm.
And you just start attacking, and when they have removal, pay 6, give it invincible, and then you just keep attacking, and then pretty soon you're gaining a lot more life than you're paying to give it invincible, and you win. And it's probably one of the better, more frustrating win cons to deal with if you're opposing the player doing this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a great one to consider if you actually open 1 or 2 of those in your pool.
Yeah, I believe one of the things I wanted to touch up on this is when we first saw the gems, people were wondering why Valor was ruby instead of diamond, and I really think it's because of the Twilight Revenant. If Valor was given to Diamond Blood, this would be immune to Bring to Justice because it's so easy to throw in Valor, and Bring to Justice is, I believe, the only it voids the troop. So Twilight Revenant, you can't. Invincible does not protect from void, correct?
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. But yeah, there are diamond cards that do give Valor as well, but not as consistent as some of the Ruby pairings, and like you mentioned, the gems. So yeah, that is not something I thought of. The only other interaction is actually in Blood, where they have the 4 cost -3, -3. That could
Explosion.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also Spoil, which is a 2 cost that could deal with Twilight Revenant as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Spoil because it's -1/-1. But if it has the Valor, then it.
No, it reverts
Oh, it
first.
reverts and then oh yeah, that's perfect. I forgot
Yeah,
about the reversion. All right.
yeah.
Well, why don't you take War Party Guide? I kind of like tacked on a little
That's
bit
fine.
more.
So War Party Guide is actually even seeing constructed play. It was in the Cosmic Showdown. When it attacks, if the top card of your deck is I think it's an Ardent Troop,
Hmm.
you just draw that card. So it's card advantage for Diamond, where Diamond never had card advantage. So it's really nice to have, and it's a 2/1 Swift Strike for 2.
Yeah.
So it's great.
All right, moving right along over to the last card, Zentot's Zealot. It's a 2-drop 3/2, so that's already a decent body on curve, but its game text really pushes it over the top because you are essentially stealing your opponent's cards. When this becomes blocked, put the top card of each opposing champion's deck into your hand for each troop blocking this, and this is each troop. So if for some reason they have to double block the Zentot's Zealot, you do get 2 additional cards, and as with blood and excuse me, sapphire, there are a number of cards out there, combat tricks that you can play. Zentos Zealot is blocked, and then you can bounce the blocker back to your opponent's hand, so you get an additional card. And to replace your bounce card, there's so many things, so many ways to play this particular card. A casualty of war, as was mentioned earlier, things that give you that card advantage as combat tricks become more and more popular.
I want to play this card against Zarlox in the arena with pheromones. Just start taking his deck and playing it.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can actually steal. Oh, yeah, PBE. You can start stealing your opponent's cards and start playing cards that you could never ever play. Oh,
Yeah.
that would be absolutely lovely. So I hope you guys all enjoyed our quick recap of all of the uncommons. We'll probably be looking at commons over the next week. We'll build a list, talk about the archetypes, and hopefully get you guys at least halfway to those 3 wins. To that really is kind of like the break even point, or positive generation for a lot of the evos out there. But some of you guys I know at the very end like our puzzles. This particular puzzle was I gotta say, the most intense puzzle we've ever done. Like we were talking about this puzzle for so long, and I don't know how we can possibly top this in the next coming week. But assume that you have no hand, no cards in your draw deck, no cards in your crypt. So pretty much this is gonna be your last turn to win the game. You have 9 resources, and your opponent's life total is 30. So that's astronomically high. How are you going to be able to deal 30 damage to your opponent? You have these 6 cards in play. Now, you don't even have to guess what card you need. You just need to know what your life total has to be, what the smallest X is going to be. So solve for the minimum value of X. You have a hideous conversion on the table, two dreadlings, an undying weaver, and pay close attention to this particular game text on this undying weaver: a spider spawn and a grim harvester. And Nico will be accepting all of the contest submissions as well, at nicosharp@gmail.com, I believe.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And I was just going to ask, Herta, before you settle on this puzzle being the last entry, do you want people to be able to get attack damage in as well? Is that part of the puzzle? Because you're not only looking at the life total you need, but the life that the opponent has, right?
all right, well, okay, you know what? Let's just say your opponent's life total is at 40, which at this point, with that sudden change, you should be able to guess that something has to happen here. Something has to happen that I don't want to give it away, but yeah, let's just say going infinite in hex is everyone's dream.
Okay. Yeah, I think that will work now. I know we've talked about it a lot, and I forgot to ask you that. Like, do you want to just set the opponent's life total to like 200? Because at a certain point, doesn't matter, right?
Well, okay, yeah. So your opponent's life total is 400. How's that? We'll there. We'll go there.
Keep adding zeros.
We'll,
Yeah.
we'll, we'll add zeros. I don't know if you actually have enough time on the clock to do what you need to do, but let's just assume that you're playing against the AI. The AI has 400 health. How could you actually win with this? And how much life do you need in order to get the job done?
Okay, I think we got it now.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I don't know. Do we want to say show your work on this particular one?
Yeah, show your work, and maybe we'll sweeten the prize. Because I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to get this. I'm not convinced. So
Oh,
if you put the work in, I might just give everyone that actually gets the answer right something, just for putting the work in.
all right. Well, you heard that. Nico feeling a little bit generous after getting 9th place in the Cosmic Showdown. Apparently having some extra. He's feeling very Colin-esque, I guess. Well, thanks for
Yes.
watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See ya.